Great. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the third session of the IRMAN Social Justice and Change webinar series and the 111th session of LUMS Live. This panel is being co-hosted by the Mehboobul Haq Research Center at LUMS, the Center for Economic Research in Pakistan, the Institute of Development Studies at Sussex, the Consortium of Development Policy Research, and the Institute of Development and Economic Alternatives, specifically by the Rethinking the Off-Grid City team. And I really would like to thank Aiza, Iza, Momina, Hala, and Marwa for their help in organizing this panel. My name is Fida Sajjad, and I'll be moderating today's discussion on housing futures in the city of Islamabad. And really, anyone who's familiar with the city knows just how challenging it is to find adequate and affordable housing in Islamabad today, particularly close to one's place of work or study. In recent years, land prices have skyrocketed, making it difficult for both low and middle income groups to access adequate housing. Kachi abadis, the predominant form of housing available to the poor, have continued to be heartlessly demolished, and new housing supply is predominantly catering to the well-to-do. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. So in light of these challenges, we have invited an esteemed group of panelists to share their understanding of existing housing challenges, the adequacy of current policies, and proposals for inclusive growth going forward, particularly for residents of Kachi abadis and low-income households in the city of Islamabad. And really, I hope for us to think collectively about how we've gotten here, the connections between the lower and upper end of the housing market, and how going forward we can not just enhance housing supply, but also protect the supply that we currently have. So I'd just like to introduce our panelists and who's, I really look up to all of their work, and we've seen that they have a commitment to the city itself. I'm going to start with Sikandar Ajam Saab, who is a member of the Federal Commission for the Review of the Islamabad 2022 Master Plan. Sikandar Saab set up and worked as principal of the Architectural and Industrial Design School at NUST. He has worked as an architect, an urban designer, and a town planner for over 4 decades, winning and securing honorable mentions in national and international design competitions. Sikandar Saab holds a master in architecture from Illinois Institute of Technology and a master's in town and regional planning from the University of Wales. Next, we have with us Dr. Asim Sajjad Akhtar, who is Associate Professor of Political Economy at Quaid-e-Azam University in Islamabad. And he's previously taught at LUMS for about 7 years as well. He's the author of numerous peer-reviewed journal articles and books. His newest book, titled The Struggle for Hegemony in Pakistan, Fear, Desire, and Revolutionary Horizons, has just been published by Pluto Press this month. And I'd highly recommend it to everyone tuning in today. Asim has also been very active with people's movements in Pakistan for over 2 decades, including with the All Pakistan Kachi Abadi Alliance, and he's currently affiliated with the left-wing Awami Workers' Party. We also have with us Aisha Shahid, who is a citizen planner and researcher with experience in the urban and rural sectors, conducting different research projects in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad, and implementing a Punjab-wide governance-related randomized control trial with the Department of Agriculture. As a self-identifying citizen planner, she is invested in understanding land development and transportation planning politics, predominantly in cities of Islamabad and Rawalpindi. She hopes to develop a citizen vision for a just housing and transportation policy for the Twin Cities. And finally, we're extremely grateful to have with us Jawad Aslam, who is founder and CEO of Ansar Management Company, or AMC. AMC was launched in 2008 with a vision to be a global leader in the provision of high-quality, affordable housing. It is recognized nationally and internationally for its unique community-based model. Really, it's one of the only private sector developers in the space of low-cost housing in Pakistan. Jawad also has been a Global Acumen Fellow and has previously worked with the low-income housing company NGO Saiban on their project Khuda Ki Basti in Kala Shakaku. So thank you all so much for taking out the time for today's panel discussion. We're really looking forward to learning from all of your work and insights today, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a very productive discussion on the issue of housing. Just before we start, I wanted to share with you the logistics of the structure of the panel itself. So this is a 90-minute session, and the discussion will be conducted in 3 rounds. For the first two rounds, I will ask each panelist a set of questions and you will have approximately 5 to 7 minutes to respond. We'll just have to stick to that so that we can keep to time. After this, we will open the floor for question and answers for about 15 minutes. Whoever is watching, you can share your questions through the Facebook chat function and the LUMS live team will forward them to us. Please do try to keep them short and precise and specify if possible who you would like to address your question to. So I think हम शुरू कर सकते हैं. Aisha, thank you so much again for joining us. मैं आपसे शुरू करना चाह रही थी. आप काफ़ी अरसे से इस्लामाबाद के लैंड और हाउसिंग पैटर्न्स को स्टडी कर रही हैं. Could you perhaps share with us कि ये land or housing market evolve किस तरह की है over time, and what are some of the changes and key trends that we are seeing in recent years?
Thank you, Fiza. Thank you for having me here. So I'm going to try and just set up the discussion a little bit, as you said, to highlight the market trends and the land development patterns. और इसमें प्राइमरली एक इस्लामाबाद में मास्टर प्लान रिव्यू एक्सरसाइज चल रही थी जिसकी एक रिपोर्ट पब्लिश हुई है, एंड आई एम रिलाइंग ऑन दैट बिकॉज इट समराइजेस द प्रॉब्लम क्वाइट वेल. सो टू क्विकली समराइज, इस सबसे पहले तो वो रिपोर्ट पहले सफ़े के ऊपर एक इस्लामाबाद के लिए विजन इस्टेब्लिश करती है बेस्ड ऑन द न्यूमरस कंसल्टेशंस इट हेल्ड एंड द मीटिंग्स इट हेल्ड. और उसमें वो कहती है कि इस्लामाबाद का विजन ये होना चाहिए कि इट इज अ सिटी that is responsive to the development needs of people, यानी कि लोगों की ज़रूरियात के मुताबिक डेवलप हो. It evolve into a sustainable city, is based on knowledge economy, यानी इल्म की बेसिस के ऊपर उसकी इकोनॉमी हो और मकामी सकाफत को रिफ्लेक्ट करे. So first of all, this is an upgrade from previous iterations जहाँ पे समझा जाता था कि इस्लामाबाद जो है एक ब्यूरोक्रेटिक सिटी और उसका काम सिर्फ ये है कि वहाँ पे जो हुकूमत में काम करते हैं लोग वहाँ पर आएँ और फिर काम करके चले जाएं, और ये एक मसला समझा जाता था कि लोग नहीं करते. However, then it identifies कि कई मसाइल हैं इधर, जैसे एक बहुत बड़ा हाउसिंग बैकलॉग है. इट एस्टिमेट्स 1 लाख यूनिट का बैकलॉग. इट एस्टिमेट्स के 25 से 30 हज़ार यूनिट्स की एनुअल रिक्वायरमेंट है, लेकिन हार्डली 2 से 3 हज़ार यूनिट साल में बन रही हैं. और ये कि पिछले 20 साल में कोई नया सेक्टर लॉन्च नहीं हुआ. जो आखिरी सेक्टर है वो कोई 1989 में लॉन्च हुआ था. So it identifies the key problems, which I think we'll agree with, but it's good to just identify it. It says कि एक तो informality का बहुत बड़ा मसला है कि लीगल डोमेन से बाहर डेवलपमेंट हो रही हैं, बहुत सारी इलीगल प्राइवेट सोसाइटीज डेवलप हो रही हैं, एंड द रिपोर्ट स्पेंड्स अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम थिंकिंग अबाउट इसको कैसे एड्रेस किया जाए. एंड इट आइडेंटिफाइज कि हाउसिंग अनअफोर्डेबल है और डिमांड और सप्लाई के बीच में एक गैप है. एंड इट आइडेंटिफाइज कि इसकी वजह यह है कि इस्लामाबाद में बहुत ज़्यादा माइग्रेशन हो रही है. पिछले 20 साल में आइडेंटिफाई करती है कि जो इसके अर्बन सेक्टर्स हैं जो जोन 1 और सीडीए के अंडर आते हैं वो दुगने हो गए हैं आबादी में, और जो इसके रूरल सेक्टर्स हैं वो 3.6 टाइम्स बढ़ गए हैं, यानी कि तकरीबन दुगने से भी दुगने हो गए हैं, comparing the 98 to 2017 census. So this is massive growth that has to be accommodated. तो फिर वो कहती है कि इसको कैसे किया जाए. And so I'm just going to quickly share my screen because I think just seeing it on a map will help to show the direction. So Fiza, if you could confirm अगर आपको मेरी स्क्रीन नजर आ रही है.
मुझे नजर आ रही है.
ओके, ठीक है. So just to quickly summarize, ये इस्लामाबाद का जोन 1 है, जो मेन सेक्टर्स हैं G6, S6, all of those. ये पिंडी है और ये जो रूरल इलाके हैं वो सारे हैं. And the way the city controls the development is by zoning these areas. So to solve the housing crisis, essentially what the city has tried to do is they have tried to open more land for development. कि CDA जो है वो urban sectors में, planned sectors में keep up नहीं कर सकता जो housing demand है उसके साथ, तो private society का एक अहम रोल है कि वो आए और वो development करें. तो एक 1992 के अंदर zoning rules की modification हुई थी जिसमें ये zone 2 और zone 5 को open कर दिया गया था private housing schemes के development के लिए. उसके बाद चूंकि बहुत सारी लीगल इनफॉर्मल सब डिविजन ऑफ लैंड और हाउसिंग डेवलपमेंट होती रही, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में कुछ केसेस भी गए और सीडीए का अपने भी रिक्वायरमेंट नजर आ रही थी. तो 2010 में एक रिव्यू हुआ जिसमें ये जो जोन 4 है इसको ओपन कर दिया गया फर्दर डेवलपमेंट के लिए. और अभी जो सबसे रिसेंट 2010 और 2012 के कुछ लॉज आए हैं उसके अंदर देयर हैज बीन अ पुश टू रिकॉग्नाइज के स्क्रॉल, लो डेंसिटी, सिंगल यूज जोनिंग वाले डेवलपमेंट जो है वो हमारे हाउसिंग का मसला हल नहीं करी है, तो हमें ज़्यादा कॉम्पैक्ट डेंस डेवलपमेंट करने की ज़रूरत है. So there's been options created for mid-rise and high-rise development zone 4 के अंदर. फिर जो मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट है हाउसिंग डेवलपमेंट के लिए, जो पहले 5 ये था कि हाउसिंग स्कीम जो है वो 50 एकड़ की बनेगी, उसको उन्होंने मिड राइजेस के लिए कम करके 20 कनाल कर दिया है. एंड माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज, व्हिच मे नॉट बी परफेक्टली एक्यूरेट, बट करेंटली माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज कि इसके पीछे लिमिटेशन ये है कि ये जो 20 कनाल है ये या तो किसी मेजर रोड के साथ होगा या किसी एग्जिस्टिंग अप्रूव्ड हाउसिंग स्कीम के अंदर होगा. यानी कि इट्स नॉट एन ओपन फॉर ऑल कि कहीं भी जाके आप 20 कनाल लेके बना लें. फिर there is a big effort to provide connectivity around the city and address the congestion. तो बहुत 2 बड़े plans जो हैं वो रिंग रोड बन रही हैं. ये पिंडी की रिंग रोड है, ये पुरानी अलाइनमेंट है, I couldn't find an updated one. लेकिन तो अभी थोड़ी सी डिफरेंट है, बट एक पिंडी की रिंग रोड है, मार्गल एवेन्यू बन रहा है ताकि जो थ्रू ट्रैफिक वो बाईपास पर जो है के बीच से ना गुजरे, और ये एक sort of future state है. And the only thing I really want to highlight here is कि रिंग रोड बेसिकली एक लाइसेंस दे देते हैं डेवलपर्स को कि शहर को रिंग रोड तक फैलने दो, वो फैलते चले जाते हैं. एंड आई जस्ट वांट टू हाईलाइट कि जो बिल्ट एरिया है वो तकरीबन इधर है और ये रिंग रोड कई किलोमीटर दूर है. सो दैट्स समथिंग आल्सो दैट हैज टू बी रेकन्ड विद कि क्या ये देख रहे हैं कि ये शहर फैलते चले जाएंगे इन रिंग रोड तक. फिर बहुत ज्यादा फोकस है उन इलीगल सोसाइटीज के ऊपर जो मर्ज हो गए रूरल एरियाज में बाय सब डिविजन ऑफ लैंड या बाय छोटे छोटे डेवलपर्स, और उसके ऊपर रिकमेंडेशन ये है कि एक स्टडी अंडरटेक की जाएगी, उनको रेगुलराइज करने का कोई मेथड देखा जाएगा. स्पेशली इसमें गौरी टाउन का केस कोर्ट में गया बिकॉज सम रेजिडेंट्स वेंट टू द कोर्ट एंड सेड कि ये एमिनिटी प्लॉट्स को भी डेवलप करें और ये ठीक नहीं है, और देयरफॉर द सुप्रीम कोर्ट सेड कि इसको रेगुलराइज करने का कोई तरीका होना चाहिए. फाइनली द रिपोर्ट सेज कि कुछ सीडीए को खुद लैंड एक्विजिशन करके मेन रोड के अलॉन्ग या नए सेक्टर्स की डेवलपमेंट करके नए हाउसिंग के लिए लैंड का बंदोबस्त करना चाहिए. So this is a fundamental approach जो कि अभी तक है, but there are some things that I would say are lacking and I would just highlight them and wrap up. एक तो यह है कि प्राइमरीली शहर ये कह रहा है या हुकूमत की पॉलिसी ये है कि हम डेवलपमेंट नहीं कर सकते, डेवलपमेंट प्राइवेट सेक्टर आकर करेगा. प्राइवेट सेक्टर आकर डेवलपमेंट करेगा तो फिर वो प्रॉफिट मोटिव के ऊपर चलेंगे, यानी कि वो देखेंगे कि जहाँ सबसे ज्यादा प्रॉफिट है हम वहाँ पर डेवलपमेंट कर लें और उस नौयत की डेवलपमेंट कर लें. तो इस वक्त हमारे पास ये एविडेंस नहीं है कि जो मीडियम या हाई राइज डेवलपमेंट की बात हो रही है, द इकोनॉमिक्स ऑफ दैट पे ऑफ. और अभी तक जो प्राइवेट हाउसिंग स्कीम नजर आ रही है उसमें ओवरवेलमिंगली आपको लो डेंसिटी या बड़े प्लॉट साइजेस नजर आते हैं, छोटी डेवलपमेंट कम नजर आती है. और अभी तक जो अप्रोच है टू मेकिंग इकोनॉमिक हाउसिंग, तो द रिपोर्ट सेज कि हर हाउसिंग स्कीम में 10% इकोनॉमी हाउसिंग के लिए होना चाहिए जो 3 से 5 मरले के घर होंगे, लेकिन साइज डज नॉट मीन अफोर्डेबिलिटी. जरूरी नहीं है कि वो 3 से 5 मरले जो है तो लोएस्ट सेगमेंट से उनकी नीड को मीट करे. फिर बहुत बड़ा इशू जो है वो इन्फोर्समेंट का है कि जब आपने इतना बड़ा लैंड ओपन कर दिया फॉर डेवलपमेंट जोन 4 के अंदर और जोन 2 और जोन 5 के अंदर, और आप ये भी कह रहे हैं कि सीडीए में या जो रियासती इदारे हैं उनमें इन्फोर्समेंट और कैपेसिटी का बहुत बड़ा फुकदान है, तो इट्स एंटायरली अनक्लियर कि जो जोनिंग रूल्स और तरीक़ेकार बताए गए हैं उनको इम्प्लीमेंट कैसे किया जाएगा, इन्फोर्स किया जाएगा. और फाइनली जो बेसिक इसका फ्रेमवर्क है दैट इज बीइंग ड्रिवन बाय द अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि लैंड को एज अ कमोडिटी ट्रीट करके उसको मार्केट में जब लाया जाएगा तो आपकी सप्लाई बढ़ जाएगी. यानी कि जो एक पहले इनफॉर्मल डेवलपमेंट थी या एक सब डिविजन ऑफ लैंड थी या गांव में लोग अपने घर बना रहे थे एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड को कन्वर्ट करके, ऑल ऑफ दैट इज नॉट एडवाइज. एंड व्हाट वी आर लुकिंग फॉर इज कि एक लैंड मार्केट हो जिसमें प्राइवेट डेवलपर आए जिसके पास एक इन्वेस्टमेंट खास सतह की इन्वेस्टमेंट मौजूद हो और वो आके इसको डेवलप करे. यानी कि ऑल ऑफ दिस लैंड दैट वाज प्रीवियसली सॉर्ट ऑफ नॉट सो एक्टिव इन द मार्केट now becomes available in the market and becomes a source of asset development and wealth development. आपके उसके ऊपर speculation की possibilities बढ़ जाती हैं, लोग जमीन लेके रख देते हैं कि हम यहाँ पे असासा बना लेंगे 20-30 साल में इसकी कीमत दुगनी तिगनी हो जाएगी. And so it creates a massive market for land which fundamentally contradicts with possibilities of affordability. So what is fundamentally missing या जिस चीज की कमी है वो ये है कि हाउसिंग को डिवोर्स किया जाता है हाउसिंग मार्केट को फ्रॉम द लैंड क्वेश्चन. यानी कि इस सारे एनालिसिस में ये कंसिडरेशन कहीं पर नहीं है कि कितनी जमीन अवेलेबल है, ये जो नई डेवलपमेंट हो रही है ये किसके लिए हो रही है, शहर के अंदर कौन से लोग आ रहे हैं और क्या वो इस डेवलपमेंट को अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं या नहीं। फिर जो लोग इस कमोडिटी को एक्वायर कर रहे हैं और अपनी वेल्थ बना रहे हैं, उसका बेनिफिट किसको जा रहा है, और क्या जिन लोगों की हाउसिंग की नीड थी वो नीड्स मीट हो रही हैं या नहीं हो रही है। फिर ये जो एक मॉडल ऑफ प्राइवेट डेवलपमेंट है, ये लोकेशनल कंसिडरेशंस को बिल्कुल नहीं देखता। यानी कि आपने ये सब इलाके जो है ओपन कर दिया डेवलपमेंट के लिए, सीरिया जो है वो ये सेक्टर्स डेवलप कर रही है, लेकिन वी नो कि जो लोएस्ट इनकम तबकात हैं उनको अपनी नौकरियों के करीब रहना है। वो अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते कि वो जोन 5 में, जोन 4 में कहीं नवाई इलाके में दूर जाकर अपनी हाउसिंग डेवलप करें और फिर शहर के बीच में आए नौकरियों के लिए। एंड सो दिस इज वेयर वी गेट द क्रिएशन ऑफ कच्ची आबादी। लेकिन it also fails to acknowledge कि शहर के बीच में there are possibilities of development, there is land available। जैसे ये सारे 8 सेक्टर्स जो है जो स्पेशल पर्पस के लिए रिजर्व हुए हैं, ये बेसिकली अनडेवलप्ड लैंड पड़ा है। या मैं आपको ये वाला मैप दिखा रही हूँ, ये इस्लामाबाद के सेंसस का मैप है, और ये जो चार्जेस ये मेन सेक्टर्स हैं, G6 G7 ये वाले सेक्टर्स हैं। इनकी आप आबादियां देखें तो ये हैं sort of between 40,000 to 50-60,000। डॉक्सियाडस का जो ओरिजिनल मास्टर प्लान था उसने ये एनविजन किया था कि ओवर टाइम एक रीजनरेशन के प्रोसेस के तहत ये सेक्टर्स डेवलप होते जाएंगे एंड देयर पॉपुलेशन विल गो अप एज हाई एज 80,000। लेकिन इन द करंट पैराडाइम ऑफ प्लानिंग, अगर आप रियासत की हुकूमत से बात करें तो वो कहते हैं कि ये सारा जोन 1 जो है ये ऑफ हैंड है, यहाँ पर कोई गुंजाइश नहीं है, कोई बफर नहीं है फर्दर डेवलपमेंट करने की। एंड सो बेसिकली आप ये कह रहे हैं कि शहर के बीच में कोई अफोर्डेबल डेवलपमेंट नहीं हो सकती और शहर से बाहर जो है वो प्राइवेट सेक्टर आके डेवलप करेगा, यानी कि ना शहर के बीच में गरीब के लिए जगह है, ना शहर के बाहर गरीब के लिए जगह है, क्योंकि आपने पेरिफेरी में स्पेकुलेशन इनेबल कर दी और शहर के बीच में आपने कम्प्लीटली उनको कंस्ट्रेन कर दिया कि उनके लिए जगह ही नहीं है कि कोई अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग आके यहाँ पर डेवलप हो सके। एंड सो द फंडामेंटल लैंड क्वेश्चन ऑफ कि क्या ज़मीन की शहर के अंदर अहमियत सिर्फ एज अ मार्केट कमोडिटी है कि जिसको सप्लाई किया जाए, उसको कुछ लोग डेवलप कर लें, उससे कुछ लोग प्रॉफिट कमा लें और फिर वो लोगों के लिए जो उसको प्राइस आउट कर सकता है, उसको अफोर्ड कर सकता है, वो आके उसको ले ले और देयरफॉर वो लेजिटिमेट मेंबर ऑफ द सिटी है और वो यहाँ पे रहना अफोर्ड कर सकता है। या लैंड की अपनी एक इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू है जहाँ पर हम कहते हैं कि हर किसी का हक है शहर के ऊपर और वो यहाँ पर आके घर बना सके। एंड it is clear कि it is the first vision, the commodity vision that's winning in the city। और अभी हम उसी तरह मूव करें, हम और जमीन जो है उसको शामिल करते जा रहे हैं और उसको इस कमोडिटी मार्केट में डालते जा रहे हैं। लेकिन जो एक राइट टू सिटी वाला है कि कुछ लोग जो है उनको मार्केट के अलावा भी हक होना चाहिए कि वो शहर में आके रह सकें और अफोर्डेबल नौकरियों तक पहुंच सकें और ट्रांसपोर्टेशन को अफोर्ड कर सकें, वो विजन अभी मिसिंग है।
थैंक यू सो मच आयशा, आपने बहुत अच्छी तरह कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेट किया है और ये अपडेट, एक तो जो मास्टर प्लान रिव्यू में जो नए चेंजेस सजेस्ट हुए हैं उनके बारे में खासी तफसील से बताया, वो बहुत हेल्पफुल है। एंड आई थिंक यू रेज सम रियली क्रिटिकल पॉइंट्स अबाउट हम बात करते हैं ज़मीन को ओपन अप करने की, लेकिन वो किसके लिए एंड में यूज़ होगी? वो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग जिसकी सबसे ज़्यादा डिमांड है, क्लियरली उसके लिए नहीं लग रहा कि उन लोगों के लिए हम सप्लाई बढ़ा सकेंगे। And it's an interesting question, right? Because if you look at policies for the past 40 to 50 years, we keep reading again and again that the government is trying to incentivize the private sector to come and build because housing demand बढ़ रही है। लेकिन वो private sector आज तक बहुत ज़्यादा incentivize नहीं हुआ low cost housing बनाने के लिए, and the market mechanisms very clearly help shape that. So just keeping all of that in mind, Asim, I wanted to turn to you. Aisha ने काफ़ी broadly context set कर दिया है। आप भी इस्लामाबाद में काफ़ी अरसे से आप काम कर रहे हैं और कच्ची आबादी के residents के साथ काफ़ी closely. You also understand the political economy factors and that drive urban development in the city. And Aisha has alluded to some of those factors. What would you also say is the nature of housing challenges in the city at the moment?
Great, thank you. And thanks to Aisha for really setting the stage. I think that was very useful and very succinct. जैसे आयशा ने कहा, बेसिकली तो अगर उसको मैं थोड़ा सा और भी ज़्यादा खुला कर बात करूँ, ये अशराफिया का शहर है और गो के नए दस्तावेजात में कुछ थोड़ा सा इससे, जैसे आयशा ने पढ़कर सुनाया है, कुछ थोड़ा सा there's some concessions made, at least at a discursive level. It is still very much a city for the elite, by the elite, except that the working mass, the poor, actually run it. The irony is कि इसको चलाना, बनाना, कंस्ट्रक्शन करना, सफाई करना, इसके ड्राइवर, इसके खानसामे, इसके रेडी वाले जो कि फल और सब्जी बेचते हैं, ये सब यानी कि मेहनत कश तबका है. And the vast majority of influx into the city over the last 20 odd years, 25 years since I've been directly involved in observing and being active in the city, is of this sort of, you know, migrant working population, including some young people who come in for higher education, but obviously they want to stay on and work as well. कमो बेश 98 में इस्लामाबाद की 8 लाख आबादी अब तकरीबन 25 लाख हो चुकी है, कमो बेश, you know, without having you know, the formal statistics at my disposal, but it's increased threefold. And as Aisha showed you, much of the increase in terms of the working poor and their housing needs is in places like Barako, out in and above Tarnol, so sort of on the outskirts. Now that's sort of the people who are coming in and finding housing, whether it's the formal housing market or the informal housing market. And I should note, while in the formal housing market, land is being commodified at rapid rates, it's not as if the informal housing market, यानी कि जहाँ पे कच्ची आबादियों में या स्टाम्प पेपर पे आम तौर पे एक पूरा पैरेलल हाउसिंग का निजाम चलता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि लोग मुफ्ता मारते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है कि वहाँ पे कोई बगैर पैसे दिए लोग रहते हैं. There is a fully well developed informal housing market जिसमें सरकार के एहलकार मुकम्मल तौर पे मिले हुए हैं, निचली सतह से लेकर ऊपर सतह तक. So essentially what we have is a situation in which planners, you know, those in power, essentially are refusing to acknowledge that there is an organic demand for housing, primarily from low-income groups. Organic से मुराद लोग हैं जिनको रिहाइश की जरूरत है, उसकी कोई खातिर खा accommodation नहीं है. जैसे आयशा ने बताया, most of the dominant planning paradigm simply doesn't just turns a blind eye essentially to this mass of the population that is coming into the city and requires housing. As a result, informal settlements proliferate कर रहे हैं, और वो निचली लेवल का जो सरकारी अमला है वो तो इस चीज को समझता है, इसलिए तो वो इसमें से कुछ अपना हिस्सा पानी लेकर लोगों को बिठा देता है जगह जगह. But at the formal level of, you know, formally the state is refusing to acknowledge this. And what's most galling about it is, in my experience, is that जब भी आप उनसे बात करने की कोशिश करें कि भाई इस पे आप बात तो करें, तस्लीम तो करें, तो वो सीधा सीधा उनके पास एक ही चीज है. और मैं अभी मिसाल दूंगा, आयशा भी इस मौके पे थी, अभी ताजा तरीन जो एक बहुत बड़ा मंसूबा इस्लामाबाद में आगाज हुआ है, the 10th Avenue, which is in the master plan. The 10th Avenue basically links Pindi from IJP Road all the way up to Margala Road, and it is running right through a big settlement, a Kachi Abadi, which is called Rimsha Colony, predominantly populated by Christians. हमारे अंदाजे के मुताबिक कोई 18 से 20,000 लोग हैं, और उसमें ना प्लान में PC1 में जिक्र है कि लोगों के साथ क्या होगा. मतलब रोड दिखाई दे रही है कि आबादी के दरमियान में से गुजरेगी, लेकिन 2-4 जुमलों के अलावा के यहाँ पे आबादी और इसको हमें डील करना करते कराते, जब हम चीखो पुकार करते करते पहुंचे उस 10th Avenue प्रोजेक्ट के EIA पे, क्योंकि CDA ने हमें घास नहीं डाला, किसी से पूछ कर नहीं हमें मालूम हुआ, तो EIA में हमने एक तरह से छापा मार लिया कह लें, क्योंकि यहाँ पे अशराफिया के मंसूबाबंदी में छापा ही मारा जा सकता है. तो वहां पहुंचे तो एक CDA का एक डिप्टी डायरेक्टर लेवल का बंदा है, जो कि इत्तेफाक से मैं तो बहुत अरसे से जानता हूँ, which shows how much learning there has been inside the institution about these matters. उसने कहा ये तो इलीगल है, इनका तो हक ही नहीं है, इनको तो बस ऊपर से बुलडोजर ही फेरना पड़े. यानी कि this is the level of acknowledgement, this is the discourse, and I'm talking about an institution जहाँ पे तस्नीम सिद्दीकी साहब ने बड़ी कोशिश से, बड़ी मेहनत से, लगन से जोर लगाकर वहाँ पे कच्ची आबादी सेल बनाया, वहाँ पे कोई मुख्तलिफ सतह पे 2-3 यानी कि स्पेशल यानी कि पोजीशंस ओहदे बनाए गए कि कच्ची आबादियों को प्लानिंग पैराडाइम का हिस्सा बनाया जाए. So these are just symptoms of a larger problem, the structural phenomenon of which Aisha has pointed out. To be honest, Fiza, yeah, you know this of course, but for your audience, this is largely a question of politics, right? This is about how much voice there is and how much acknowledgement there is. Ashrafiya की तरफ से तो acknowledgement नहीं है. हमारा जो काम है, मैं academic भी हूँ, but that's my day job. Most of my time, of course, is spent organizing and trying to develop a political voice for people who are simply ignored in the mainstream. और मेरा ये तजर्बा है और मेरा बार बार मेरा मुशाहिदा है कि जब भी हम मुनज़्ज़म होकर चीखो पुकार कर अपनी बात को मनवा सकते हैं, फिर ही थोड़ी बहुत कोई रियायत होती है, फिर ही थोड़ी बहुत. But unfortunately that's largely defensive. यानी कि वो ये है कि कोई बस्ती है, जैसे मैंने आपको अभी H9 में रिक्शा कॉलोनी का मिसाल दी. इससे पहले इस्लामाबाद में उससे भी बड़ी बस्ती थी सब्जी मंडी के गिर्द I11 सेक्टर में, जो आज से 7 साल पहले बेदर्दी से ऐसे लग रहा था कि हम फलस्तीन में बैठे हुए और इजरायली डिफेंस फोर्सेस ने आकर हमारे ऊपर हमला किया. और उस वक्त भी यही नारा था कि इलीगल है, बस खत्म, दैट्स ऑल. बनी गाला एज वी नो इलीगल नहीं हो सका, या और बहुत सारी चीजें इलीगल नहीं हो सकी, लेकिन गरीब का घर इलीगल है. So this is purely about politics, this is about power, this is about voice. And of course there are certainly planners and developers, जैसे जवाद साहब से भी हम सुनेंगे, who push against the tide, but for the most part, it is really against, we're pushing against. गंगा एक तरफ बह रहा है और हम उसकी दूसरी तरफ जा रहे हैं. So that's वो वाला साइड मेरा ख्याल है, इसको समझना जरूरी है. और जब तक हम मेहनत कशों की, गरीबों की, जो कि शहर को चलाते हैं इस्लामाबाद समेत, जब तक उनकी वॉइस नहीं होगी, whether that's in parliamentary forum, whether that's amongst the intelligentsia, the planning community, and then obviously amongst the actual people who implement projects, the bureaucracy at large, उस वक्त तक तो ये हमारे तो pitch battles जमीन पे चलते रहेंगे. But I think in the long run we have a serious crisis, and there's many things that we might touch on today. Islamabad is a declining water table. इतने सारे लोगों को और इतनी सारी स्कीमों को आप कैसे वाटर पानी फराहम करेंगे? Islamabad has also air quality problems, nothing like Lahore, but that's going to worsen with the construction and other projects. तो ये long term phenomenon बढ़ता जाएगा और लोग आते जाएंगे, लोग इनफॉर्मल मार्केट से अपने हाउसिंग की जरूरियात पूरी करते रहेंगे और हम उनको बुलडोज करते रहेंगे. And this cycle has to be interrupted with some very clear political commitment. So I'll stop there and we can carry on.
Great, thank you so much, Asim. And actually, I had a few questions about Rimsha Colony and 10th Avenue later, so I want to come back to those questions as well. लेकिन आपने एक तो ये बहुत अहम पॉइंट रेज किया है कि जो हमारी डिसीजन मेकिंग है उसको डेमोक्रेटाइज करने की सख्त ज़रूरत है. आई थिंक अक्रॉस सिटीज़ वी सी डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटीज़ को एक्सेस करना, उनसे डायलॉग करना, उनको अकाउंटेबल होल्ड करना एक इम्पॉसिबिलिटी लगती है. And there's always this tendency to view the poor as illegal and not deserving of being there. And हमें ये और फिर मगर ये as you said ये selectively use होती है category legality की और illegality की. तो ऐसा क्यों है? इसके बारे में भी I thought हम थोड़ी सी आगे जाके थोड़ी सी और बात करें. और इसके साथ साथ जो हमारा जो Doxiadis की भी जो writing थी, in 1965, even after he left, there's a paragraph where he says, it's written what maybe a reflection later कि आपने city के builders के लिए पहले घर बनाने हैं before building for anyone else. लेकिन वो वाला जो lesson है वो I don't think आज तक हमारे CDA ने या फिर जो भी planning के लिए responsible हैं वो खास adopt किया है. तो मैं जवाद आपकी तरफ आना चाह रही थी next. आप you're one of the only private sector developers who are trying to build low cost housing. That's your primary mission. आपको इस्लामाबाद में कोई opportunities मिली हैं to develop low cost housing? I've seen of course I'm familiar with your projects. मगर ये कोई opportunities arise की हैं, अगर की हैं तो वो किस form में हैं और अगर नहीं हैं तो ऐसा क्यों है? और relatedly मुझे ये याद आ रहा था कि तस्नीम सिद्दीकी साहब जो कि recently passed away and was one of the pioneers of low cost housing in Pakistan, and you worked very closely with him. He also tried to build low cost housing in Islamabad, but that never came to fruition. So are you aware of why that was? ताकि हमें थोड़ा सा sense मिल जाए कि challenges क्या है, अगर करना भी चाहे तो क्या मसले आते हैं उसमें?
Thank you, Fiza, and thank you to the rest of the panelists here. It was very interesting to listen to everybody. So let's start with the last question first. With Tasneem Saab Marhoom did a lot of work. I assume that Asim Saab has much more familiarity with that, to be quite honest. But when you just look it up and you see that Tasneem Saab had done work for decades, not years, for decades, in regards to looking how the successful model of what they did in the Sindh Kachhi Abadis Authority, and where he was the DG at that point in time, and trying to transfer the knowledge from there to here. So when you start looking into that and you start understanding, you read some of the papers, you talk to Tasneem Saab, talk to Arif Hassan Saab, you start realizing that all the work has been done. Everything is there. The roadmap is there. The mistakes that were made, let's say in the case of the Sindh Kachhi Abadi, and they learned, and they used to refer to themselves, they do refer to themselves as action-based research. So the idea is that they would put examples out there in the field and try to figure out what's working, what's not working, and then improve based on iterations. And so they had come up with some basic concepts in Islamabad of how to apply those principles here. The problem, again, going back to what Asim Saab is saying, is that there's a lack of political will. When you have the Supreme Court saying that you need to provide housing for the lower income segments, and they are equally citizens of society here, and they're directly questioning how come the elite tabqa is able to violate all of the rules for the farms in Chaksadad, farms which are supposed to be for growing vegetables in orchards and poultry farms, but yet there's palaces here and shadi halls here and the different types of elegant and elaborate structures here. Nobody really calls that sector out. But when it comes to the Kachhi Abadis, as was mentioned already, that they become the prime target. So some of the things that were actually that Tasneem Saab had basically highlighted over time was that that there needs to be some basic principles. That the principle of incremental development needs to be a part of what the Kachhi Abadis are going to be. There needs to be an approach for this income segment. And now I'm going to come to what we've done and how what I would say is we're different than what Tasneem Saab was doing. Different in a worse way, not in a better way. I think that he was always at heart trying to get to the lowest income segment. And so the model that works for the lowest income segment and the informal sector is slightly different than what works for the formal sector. So, the basic principle just very quickly was how do you incorporate incremental development into the different schemes for the Kachhi Abadis? How do you allow for easy installments? And how do you make the processes simple? You have something as the initial process for the Kachhi Abadis had like 25 steps or something, and their recommendation was to make it a single, one window operation. How do you make sure that you have community involvement to actually try to understand what are the needs, what are the limitations, what are the affordability of the community, and probably the most important one that I think is that this comes off as awkward, but how do you accept the actual planning standards that work for this income segment? When we talk about planning standards, they're always led by engineers. And we'll hear from Sikandar Saab. I'm sure he'll have much more to discuss on this topic. But when we're talking about the lower income segments, when we talk about the planning standards, right now the current minimum access road is going to be 30 feet. So now you're talking about a people that cannot afford more than a motorcycle, and yet the minimum width is going to be 30 feet, which makes ultimately the affordability or the cost almost impossible for the end user. So these are the things that Tasneem Saab has done, and what the Supreme Court actually asked him to do, and they endorsed it, that what the CDA needs to do is regularize the Kachibadis from the past, and then on top of that, come up with a robust plan for affordable housing. None of that is happening. If the Supreme Court is giving the order and it's not happening, then there's not much we can do except for kick and scream, as Asim Saab is suggesting. What we're doing in affordable housing is slightly, now I wouldn't say slightly, it would be above that. Our ticket size is roughly around 20 lakh rupiah, 25 lakh rupiah. Although you find a lot of difference between what this is and what the informal settlements are going to be affording, we still find that it's not possible to do this sort of housing or these kind of schemes in Islamabad. I live in Islamabad, and I would love more than anything else to do something close to my home, but it's been impossible, and I have to go as far as Qusur and Multan to find the main factor, which is land affordability. What I will talk about maybe in the next round, or when we're talking again, is about what kind of model can actually work in terms of affordable housing. And there's this concept of what Fiza, you talked about, the enabling environment, trying to get the private sector to come. And it's not that easy. There are examples of that in the world where people have tried to do it, where this enabling environment concept comes in, that the government becomes the enabler, but saying it and doing it are two different things. And when the policies are made at the end and you see how they actually play out, it's very far from what the intentions initially were, that you're trying to get private sector developers to come in and build affordable housing. Yet at the end of the day, it ends up being something very different and ends up being another example of housing for the rich. So I'll also stop there, and then we can come back to that specifically, how I see a model can work for affordable housing in Pakistan.
Thank you so much, Jawad. I think one of the things that really strikes me from what you just said is that you'd like to make low-cost housing in Islamabad, but there isn't any affordable land that's currently available. And it also, and which is a big crisis, of course, right? Because how do we think about building supply and offering supply if land is prohibitively so expensive? But it also goes back to Aisha's earlier point, where she's also pointed out that, maybe you have some affordable land on the outskirts of the city, but that doesn't solve your problem, right? Because housing isn't just about affordability. It also has to be close to, it has to be viable, it has to be close to where you work. It has to, it has to be designed keeping in mind the target audience and what will work for them. We have way too many examples of what has failed. We've tried this approach in the past, and that's failed again and again. So Sikandar Saab, I finally wanted to come to you. You served as member of the Federal Commission for the Review of the Master Plan. And it's great to see that there is some rethinking around the vision of what Islamabad should be. I was actually struck when reading the vision that there was a lot more at offer here, but interestingly, the ideals around equity and inclusiveness I felt were still missing. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about that exercise. I think Aisha has already shared some of the key kind of points and policy actions that are mentioned, recommendations in the plan itself. But how would you, as per the review, what would you say, how is the city attempting to meet these housing needs? And given particularly what others have said, how successful do you think these policies will be? There is a very elite-centric kind of planning paradigm that we've heard from everyone about. So how do we make sure we don't end up repeating the same mistakes that we're seeing in other cities?
Okay, first I would just like to make it clear that I'm not from CDA and I'm not taking CDA's line. And I've been living here in Islamabad for, I think, more than all of you. I've been living here for about 45 years. Oh. So that I'd like to clarify that. The other thing I'd like to do is this, I think everybody's talking about their own domains. As a planner, I would like to put things in a holistic view from the beginning. What happened and what you have to understand the historical context of Islamabad. 1958 decision was made to set up the city. 1962-63, Doxiadis was hired, and he was hired, many people don't know, he was hired by the Ford Foundation. And I think you people are very young. At my time, we used to have these Ford Transit vans. They used to be running all over Islamabad. So the Ford Foundation hired him, and it was supposed to be a car city. And they were paying him for that. Not many people know about that. But anyway, Doxiadis he planned it, and he had two sectors for labor housing. It was I-9 and I-10. They were designated for low-cost housing. But that never happened because he was disbanded and the bureaucracy did what they wanted to do. So that was one aspect of it. Also, he felt that the labor should live near where the construction was going on, and they would have some kind of a thing that they would be finished, because he was looking. There were two cities that come up just before that. One was Brasilia in Brazil, and the other one was by Le Corbusier. He designed the one in Chandigarh. Nehru was very much involved with it. In fact, Nehru came to Islamabad also, and Ayub Khan showed him the plans and what he was doing, and got some input from him. The other thing which all of you I would like to point out, that Islamabad is not, there are many things which Islamabad is different. Now, Islamabad has an area, a designated area of 906.50 square kilometer. That is Islamabad. So there's the other cities keep on expanding and all that, but those are Islamabad. That's the Islamabad area. The urban area is about 230 square kilometers. The rural areas is 466 square meters, and Islamabad Park is another 220 kilometers. The other thing which I would like to just emphasize here is this: the definition of urban and rural. The definition of urban and rural in Pakistan is, I don't agree with it. I think the definition of rural and urban of India is better, in which they say that about 5,000, the settlement of 5,000 people, and 75% of them are not engaged in agriculture. And I think the population density is like, I think 400 persons per square kilometer or something. So now if you use those conditions here, then the area which is designated as rural, which has got a very high population growth rate of about 7%, and the other Islamabad, the metropolitan area, is roughly about 3.5%. Now that area would become urban. And now that area is not served by any municipal services. Now Islamabad area, only 33% of Islamabad has municipal services. Now that area is what I would call a slum. I mean, there are two kinds of one is Kachi Abadi, which is different than a slum, and the other is a slum which is on the urban fringes. Like now, Baraku is a slum. The land is owned by people here, but the social services are not there. I mean, it's not a community. And if you go there, I mean, you would find polio there, you find health issues there, you have security issues there. That's another kind of a slum. The Kachi Abadis or the informal settlements, they're a different kind of slum, because they have land issues, which maybe the Baraku people don't have it, but again, there's substandard housing. So what I've been trying to tell CDA and other people to recognize these issues, but I'm in the process of educating them. If you look, now I would suggest all of you to go to CDA's website, look at it and find out what are the projects, what they've been paid for, and what are projects going to do, they're going to implement. They are all in the metropolitan area. So the outside the urban fringes, which is about 65% are slums, the area which was shown 4 and 4D, and there's another story going on in 4D, which, maybe if I have enough time, maybe I could talk about that also. But what is happening is this, that only the funds are going to be spent in Islamabad metropolitan area. They're not going to be spent on the Kachi Abadis. Kachi Abadis are very simple. You have only two alternatives. Either you upgrade the Kachi Abadis, let them live on the land, upgrade them, or you relocate, resettle them if they're coming in some aspect of a transportation route which is going to affect the city, or some other social services which is going to affect the city as an entity. And the other thing is this, that Islamabad has a population of about the metropolitan area 1 million. Now the rural area, the so-called rural area, which I think is an urban slum, the urban fringes, there's another 1 million, and they're increasing at 7%. So in a few years' time, that will increase. That will become maybe double. It's got a high exponential growth. So a lot of problems are going to happen in Islamabad. They're going to be social issues. They're going to be social problem. And there's one kind of ethnicity of people are, maybe living there. So they're going to be ethnic problems. I think the CDA is not really realizing, and they're now, the previous government which was there, some of the other, they advocated high rise. Now, I was trying to educate them that, look, it's not about high rises or low rise, it's about densities. You need to have certain densities. Now, do you know what is the density of the housing which is going to be done in the Mo area? I will tell you, it's about 1,400 person per acre. 1,400 persons per acre. Do you know how much more times that is in the Karachi slum area, which Parveen was working on that? It's about 7-8 times more than in B17. Again, they're making these two towers 22-story towers. What happened in the West? I was trying to tell them that there's Pruitt-Ego. It was demolished. Other things were demolished. This is for middle-class people who are going to be put in 22 feet, 22-story high apartments, and they're going to be living on the services of the surrounding area. So what's going to happen in the future? I don't know. These are the things which are going to affect us as citizens. But you can have medium density. You can have medium density with the same as the high density, but having 22 stories tall buildings is inhuman. They'll be crying. Nobody will be able to go there. Even police will not be able to go there. It will be a vertical slum, like in the I-11 sector also. It was a so-called Afghan Abadis and all that, but afterwards, not in Afghan Abadi, even police will not go there inside it because of the social issues. The same thing will happen in these 22-story apartments. Now, again, I would like to talk about people. I'm not talking about my friends or colleagues there. We should be talking about social housing. We should not be talking about low-cost housing. Low-cost housing, I don't know. I don't understand low-cost housing. You need to talk about social housing, and you need to house certain people there. They should have dignity. The other thing, what is going to happen to Islamabad city is going to really deteriorate over time. You have to demagnetize Islamabad. Islamabad has to be demagnetized. Do you know what is happening around all the peripheral Islamabad? What is happening is areas under Rawalpindi Development Authority, the nice diagram which was shown by Aisha Shahid. Now all the RDA schemes are coming all around Islamabad and non-RDA schemes, and they do not have any public space. They have housing and they have commercial. Large housing, small housing, whatever it is, and then all the government is making all very good transportation. Metros are going to come from the airport. They're going to come here. This top city people are going to come here. Now they don't have the facilities Islamabad have. I'm a resident here, and if you would, Asim Sajjad Akhtar was talking about the air quality. Do you know what is the air quality when there's a holiday for 5? I have a meter. You just check your meter. When the holiday season, people from Lahore, KP, they all come here. When they're going to Mari, the 200,000 people come to Islamabad, and the air quality is horrible. So now all these schemes on the periphery of Islamabad, they don't have any public space. They even don't have good restaurants. Now everybody is coming into Islamabad. There's congestion going on there, and quality, everything is going to, but nobody is controlling these RDAs because they pay tax to the RDA. They don't pay tax to Islamabad. So I think what I'm trying to make a point is this, that Islamabad has to become demagnetized. You have to demagnetize Islamabad. You have to look into these peripheral schemes. And then I was trying to tell CDA again that you must have a regional plan. So unless you have a regional plan, not just on the specified area. Now they were telling me that it has to be on the specified area. I talked to the minister also for planning. They were saying, we can't control them, this and that. But unless you have a regional plan, you have a regional settlement plan, you have a regional structure plan, you have a metropolitan structure plan, only then can you go towards a guided future, which there's future for all of us. Whether it's a Kachiabadi, whether it's a Baraku. Do you know what's the population of Baraku? It's 5 lakh people. I mean that is Baraku. Okay. Again, now if Aisha Shahid shares the screen with me and shows me, I just tell you about 4D, what is happening in 4D. Can you show me the first plan that you showed us? Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
and then we'll just
okay.
wrap up.
Now
I think
just please, everybody look at 4D. Now 4D, this 4D2 somewhere, the Baraku is somewhere there. Baraku is somewhere there. Now this 4D is largely, it is undeveloped, and the developers, I would like to name them, but the Beria and the other developers, they're coming in here. Now there's a dilemma. Either you give it to the developers or you make it into Baraku, you make it into slums. But again, I was telling them that, look, there has to be certain amount of densities. You have densities. You even have 300 persons per acre densities. Even that's pretty high, but don't have high rises. Now now the policy of the previous government was to put high rises in 4D. Now you can't have housing. Everybody's talking about housing. Now housing, is without public space, without transportation, without schools, without the denter, without the maid, without everything else. It's not middle class housing or upper class housing is not going to work without that. So now planning what is happening here is happening in isolation. Now again, what I'd like to point out is this, that the master plans, some of the master plans, there are different approaches around the master plans. There's a strategic environmental analysis, the C approach. The master plans, when it takes about a year to get done, 1.5 years to get done, and things get outdated by the time the master plan comes out. But if you have the terms of reference for a master plan, I was trying to put what the Kachiya Bajis, the informal settlement, the zone 4D, and the other zones, you have the terms of reference, and you hire a consultant, he works on the terms of reference, whether it's housing, whether it's transport, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's a smart city concept, or whether Islamabad is going to become a knowledge economy. The universities are, I think, maybe 22, 25, 30 universities are there in Islamabad. The literacy rate is different than the rest of Pakistan. It's about 85%. This means that women are literate in Islamabad. So Islamabad is going towards the knowledge economy. Now, if the term of references are framed properly, and then we can plan for it. We can plan for transportation. Should we have, now I, for myself, was trying to tell CDA that, look, don't make these roads with these interchanges and all that. You demagnetize Islamabad. Because if you're going to do that, then more people are going to come in. More people are going to come into Islamabad. They're going to just have congestion. Now, if you have a regional plan, then the other places, if they have their own job opportunities, if they have their own education institutions. Now tell me, all the universities are in Islamabad. They know universities, the new settlements, which RT is doing around Islamabad, the Mumtaz city, the top city, and a lot of other cities. So what I'm saying is this, that Islamabad, if it's not properly guided, there's going to be slumization around Islamabad, because the urban fringes, there's not proper policy for controlling urban fringes. All the area that you see, we'll be sitting in the middle of slums. The Kachizabadis of a certain religious person, I think it was 20% are Christian in Islamabad, the Kachizabadis, they will increase, whether good or not. There will be problem with jobs. Islamabad is going towards a knowledge economy. Now, people don't realize.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay,
sorry, we just have to move on to the next round, but I think you it's extremely helpful to hear from you as well, and think about just how alarming the situation is in terms of thinking about the next 20 to 25 years in the city, also thinking about municipal service provision outside of what is considered Islamabad. In fact, we had a question from Bilal Ayaz Bhatt, who was asking about the impact of urbanization on municipal services, especially water supply and sanitation. And I think people have pointed to that. Asim has also talked about it earlier. I mean, I do think that, when the idea of just talking about slums in a particular way, we always think of them as a derogatory kind of space, but these are also places that are home to a lot of people who have no other option, and so that's a longer conversation in terms of how we actually view and talk about these areas in a way that humanize them rather than the other way around. But I think one other thing that really struck me as you were talking about the challenges that Islamabad faces, and I absolutely agree with you that it's never just about built structures and housing, but it's also about the kind of associated services and transport links that are critical, is that, again, this issue of who will engage with the CDA, where are these planning ideas even coming from, these ideas of building high rises as a solution. How do we think about this, democratizing this decision making further? This we can have a consultant who comes in to do this, but what about involving citizens and residents in that process? I think it requires a much larger conversation and envisioning exercise. So I know that we are, we're in our last 15 minutes of the session. What I will do is I'll go on with the second round of questions, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat box, and I will ask them as they come, but we'll have to keep it quite brief because we just have a little bit of time left. But I actually wanted to zoom into this question of Kachi Abadis, and we've seen, again, when we've talked about this today, that since the mid to late 90s, the CDA has recognized 10 settlements. And Sikandar, you were saying that there are only two options: one is upgrading and one is resettling. But what about all the settlements that have not even been recognized by the CDA yet? And alongside that, we keep seeing demolitions of existing abadis despite Supreme Court orders, as Jawad was also mentioning. And I really thought, if we have a little bit of time, I wanted to ground our conversation about this by focusing on the case of Rimsha Colony in H9 in Islamabad, where, as Asim said, there are 18 to 20,000 families at the risk of losing their homes due to the construction of the 10th Avenue project, which, from what I understand, is a 12 billion rupee project. And I thought by just putting our minds together, we could think collectively and broadly about why it is important to recognize and upgrade existing abadis. How do we think about minimizing the impacts of involuntary resettlement and not resettling people very far away or not at all? And I'm going to ask you questions one by one, where if someone has something specific to say, we can structure it more as a discussion. And perhaps, Aisha, I wanted to kind of go back to you. And the first question that arises for me is that, do we really need a large road construction project when there is more and more evidence that suggests that we need to be prioritizing public transport over road building for long-term sustainability and to enhance livability in a city? So what is the justification for this project? And assuming that this road is built, is it possible to think about alternatives to current demolition plans? What are some kind of principles and policies that we should be thinking about?
So thank you. And I think the answer to your question has come up in the different points that people have raised. But I'm going to just share my screen one more time because I think this map is so powerful. So this is Islamabad, the current built area, zone 1. This is Sindhi. And I'm just going to say कि इस वक्त क्या बड़े प्रोजेक्ट प्लान हो रहे थे. अभी तो हुकूमत थोड़े ट्रांजिशन में है, लेकिन हम बात ये कर रहे हैं कि हाउसिंग विजन ये है कि जोन 4 में डेवलपमेंट होगी, जोन 5 में डेवलपमेंट होगी, जोन 1 में डेवलपमेंट होगी, लेकिन शहर के बीच में बड़ा रश है. तो इस वक्त शहर में क्या प्रोजेक्ट हो रहे हैं जी, कि ये एक्सप्रेसवे की एक्सपेंशन हो रही है, इसमें लेंस ऐड हो रही है क्योंकि इसमें बड़ा रश होता है, और जो डेली कम्यूट होती है लाखों गाड़ियों की, उनको कैसे अकोमोडेट किया जाए. फिर पिंडी और इस्लामाबाद के अंदर इंटरेस्टिंगली कश्मीर के ऊपर दोनों शहर बड़े अच्छी तरह कोऑर्डिनेट करना शुरू हो जाते हैं। कुछ चौक पॉइंट्स आइडेंटिफाई किए गए हैं। तो ये डीएचए के आगे डिफेंस चौक का एक इंटरसेक्शन बनने का प्लान है। तो चेरी चौक के ऊपर एक डबल स्टोरी फ्लाईओवर बन रहा है। एक अमार चौक लई एक्सप्रेसवे का प्लान बन रहा था। 55 अरब का वो एक मंसूबा था विच वाज कटिंग स्ट्रेट थ्रू पिंडी। पूरे शहर को वो बिल्कुल 2 हिस्सों में डिवाइड करके बीच में एक हाईवे बनाने जा रहे थे which was going to connect right on to 10th Avenue and cut through Islamabad, बिल्कुल बीच में जाकर और इधर जहाँ पर फ्यूचर डिफेंस कॉम्प्लेक्स बना था वहाँ पे आके इसमें लोड करना था। तो बेसिकली जो मैं प्लान की डॉक्यूमेंट्स भी पढ़ी थी कि व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ द 10th Avenue, इट क्लियरली सेड कि चूंकि एक्सप्रेसवे के ऊपर 9th Avenue के ऊपर कश्मीर हाईवे के ऊपर बड़ा रश है, तो जो शहर के थ्रू ट्रैफिक जा रहा है उसको एक और रास्ता देने की बड़ी सख्त जरूरत है। And so it's completely prioritizing movement through the city कि जो एक सिरे से दूसरे सिरे तक लोग जा रहे हैं उनकी मूवमेंट किसी डिले और रश के बगैर इतनी अहम है कि इसको फैसिलिटेट करने के लिए हम एग्जिस्टिंग डेंस वाइब्रेंट कोर ऑफ द सिटी को बिल्कुल तबाह करके बीच में एक चीरते फाड़ते एक सड़क बना देंगे। एंड इफ यू लुक एट द मॉडल स्प्लिट, इन्होंने ट्रैफिक स्टडी के अंदर देखा था कि मॉडल स्प्लिट यहाँ इर्द गिर्द की सड़कों के ऊपर, जिना एवेन्यू के ऊपर, एक्सप्रेसवे के ऊपर, कश्मीर हाईवे के ऊपर, एंड आई वाज सरप्राइज्ड एंड शॉक्ड कि 70% से ज्यादा जो है मॉडल स्प्लिट गाड़ियों का है। यानी कि हमारे यहाँ जब कार ओनरशिप बहुत लो है और ज्यादातर लोग मोटरसाइकिल पे करते हैं, जैसे हमने एक तरह का बाजार में पिंडी में स्टडी की थी, तो अगर हम वहाँ पे मॉडल स्प्लिट देखें तो आधे से ज्यादा ट्रिप्स पैदल होती हैं, कोई 1/3 ट्रिप्स मोटरसाइकिल के ऊपर होती हैं। लेकिन इस्लामाबाद में इस वक्त एक कार बेस्ड पैराडाइम इतना तगड़ा हो गया है कि यहाँ पर पैदल क्या मोटरसाइकिल वाले की भी जगह नहीं बची, सड़क के ऊपर सिर्फ गाड़ी वाला है और आप उसको फर्दर फैसिलिटेट करने के लिए एक और सड़क बनाने जा रहे हैं। तो पहली तो बात यह है कि दिस इज इन वायलेशन ऑफ इस्लामाबाद की अपनी एक नेशनल ट्रांसपोर्टेशन पॉलिसी है जो क्लियरली कहती है कि थ्रू ट्रैफिक को डिप्रायोरिटाइज किया जाए और पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट और नॉन मोटराइज ट्रांसपोर्ट को प्रायोरिटाइज किया जाए। तो एक तो ये प्रायोरिटीज ही हमारी अपनी पॉलिसीज के खिलाफ हैं। दूसरा, इफ यू जूम इन एंड इफ यू लुक एट कि जो 10th Avenue की जगह उस पर हो क्या रहा है, तो जैसे सिकंदर साहब कह रहे हैं कि वाज़े तौर पर नजर आता है कि ये बड़े बड़े इंटरसेक्शन हमारी मैसिव वॉल्यूम ऑफ गाड़ियों को सपोर्ट करने के लिए, एंड यू सी द डेंस ऑर्गेनिकली डेवलप्ड आबादी जिसको सीडीए ने यहाँ खुद आके सेटल किया था। आई थिंक आसिम इसके ऊपर बात करेंगे। इसको बिल्कुल तबाह करके इसके ऊपर एक सड़क बनाई जा रही है, एंड इट्स नॉट लाइक साथ में जगह नहीं है। इफ यू लुक सराउंडिंग, साथ में इस्लामिक इंटरनेशनल यूनिवर्सिटी की जमीन है जो कि अनडेवलप्ड खाली ग्रीन लैंड पड़ा है, या दूसरी तरफ जो है कुछ एग्रीकल्चरल यूज है। तो इट्स नॉट लाइक जगह नहीं है, इट्स जस्ट के एक पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी इशू है जहाँ पर चूंकि ये लोग इनविजिबल हैं, ये इंक्रोचीज हैं, ये इलीगल हैं और इनका शहर पे उतना हक नहीं है जितना लगता है कोई इलीगल प्राइवेट हाउसिंग सोसाइटी का या जो कि फॉर्मल सेक्टर में रहने वाले लोग हैं। तो इसलिए जस्टिफाइड है कि सीडीएन को इंक्रोचमेंट कहकर या जो प्रोजेक्ट डिजाइनर्स हैं इनको इंक्रोचमेंट कहकर बोलते हैं कि ये तो स्टेक होल्डर भी नहीं है, हम तो इन्हें केटर करने की भी जरूरत नहीं है। एंड there are people who are in conversation. So sorry, Fiza, I'm just going to wrap up. So my final point was just that कि चूंकि एक हमारे जहन में विजन है कि ये जो सारा जोन 1 है ये ऑफ हैंड्स है, इसके ऊपर तो और कोई बफर खत्म हो गया, कोई जगह ही नहीं बची, और चूंकि हम वो लीगल और इलीगल की कैटेगरीज में फंसे रहते हैं, देयर इज नो रूम और पॉसिबिलिटी फॉर एनी इनोवेशन। लेकिन जैसे सिकंदर साहब ने कहा कि व्हाट यू रियली नीड इज नॉन मार्केट हाउसिंग, और जो रिमशा कॉलोनी की आबादी शो करती है वो ये शो करती है कि अगर आप जमीन प्रोवाइड कर दें तो फिर लोग अपनी हाउसिंग का बंदोबस्त इंक्रीमेंटली कर लेते हैं। इट्स नॉट द हाउसिंग दैट्स एक्सपेंसिव, इट्स द मार्केटाइजेशन ऑफ लैंड दैट हैज मेड इट कंप्लीटली अनअफोर्डेबल। एंड सो व्हाइल ये क्राइसिस है, यहाँ पे एक अपॉर्चुनिटी भी नजर आती है कि यू कैन ऑल्टर द प्लान, यू कैन 10th Avenue की जगह 11th Avenue बना ले, अलाइनमेंट थोड़ी सी तब्दील कर ले, लेकिन देयर इज अ अफोर्डेबल लो इनकम हाउसिंग सोसाइटी जो कि सोशल हाउसिंग के तकरीबन बराबर है, विच इज ऑल्सो अ सोल्यूशन। एंड आई थिंक दैट्स एन अपॉर्चुनिटी कि हम इसको एक मॉडल के तौर पर डेवलप करें कि शहर के बीच में अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग कैसे बन सकती है।
Because thank you so much, Aisha, and I think this is a really relevant point that Sikandar Saab also brought up about social housing, because वो एक दूसरा issue with low cost housing is कि उसकी long term affordability guarantee करना भी एक मुश्किल काम होता है। तो social housing की डेफिनेटली ज़रूरत है, लेकिन उसकी कोई ख़ास बात नहीं की जा सकती। लेकिन जैसे आपने कहा कि एक पॉसिबिलिटी एग्जिस्ट करती है उस, और यहाँ पे एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है उसको आने की। So Asim, I just wanted to just follow up on that with you very quickly. We're thinking about alternatives, for instance, whether it means upgrading, recognition, resettlement. आपने जब देखा है कि अगर फॉर एग्जांपल ये वाली आबादी यहाँ से इसी तरह हटाई जाती है विदाउट एनी ऑल्टरनेटिव्स, उसके किस किस तरह के एडवर्स इम्पैक्ट्स आ सकते हैं, और ये जो हम बात कितनी की है कि इलीगैलिटी की लेंस से देखना, उसके क्या फिर नुकसान होंगे अगर हम कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव्स इस तरह ना सोचें।
नुकसान ही नुकसान है। लोग दरबदर होते हैं, उनकी जिंदगियां तबाह होती हैं, यानी कि एक पूरा एक अजाब है। eviction is a human tragedy. There's no other way to put it. And हमें कश्मीर और फ़लस्तीन में तो याद आता है जब, और हम बहुत चीखते चलाते हैं, लेकिन हमारे बिल्कुल अपने शहरों में जब ये होता है तो हम कोई जवाब बना लेते हैं। There is, I don't want to overstep my mandate, but there is a very deep need to discuss and think about this very middle class patronizing attitude कि यहाँ पे जो गरीब आदमी बसता है वहाँ पे तो पुलिस वाला भी नहीं जा सकता। मैं खुद जाता रहा हूँ, वहाँ पे कोई ऐसी बात नहीं है कि वहाँ पे सिर्फ असला और मुजरिम ही रहते हैं। लोग रहते हैं, वो मेहनत कश हैं, वो शहर को चलाते हैं। मैं बार बार कहूँगा, ये जो रिमशा कॉलोनी के लोग हैं, ये CDA के मुलाजमीन हैं, ये म्यूनिसिपल वर्कर्स हैं, ये बड़े बड़े अफसरों की कोठियों को जाकर रोज मैम साहबों की कोठियां साफ करते हैं। We need to do away with this rhetoric as if somehow कि ये जो गरीब बंदा बसता है और जो slums हैं, this part of this is because of this Islamabad the beautiful वाला जो नारा है ना, लगता है Islamabad the beautiful नारा अगर लगने का मतलब ये है कि आप गेटोस बना लें दीवार चढ़ा के, ताकि वो लोग नजर ना आए जो एक्चुअली इस्लामाबाद को साफ रखते हैं। The problem is with us, not with them, so to speak, insofar as an us and them binary is created. So this is fundamentally what this is about, as I started out saying at the beginning. जहाँ तक रिमशा कॉलोनी की बात है, Aisha has made the place very clear. चले कई जगहों पे तो आप, एक तो ये सवाल है कि रोड की जरूरत क्या है, वो भी उसने आपसे बात करी। अगर आपने बनानी है रोड, तो ये क्या वजह है कि आप रोड की डिजाइन को थोड़ा सा इधर नहीं कर सकते, उधर नहीं कर सकते? What explains that? Nothing other than the fact that complete insensitivity or concern with the fact that 20,000 people will be evicted. That's all. There's no other explanation. It's really that simple. क्योंकि अगर वहां पे कोई बड़ा आदमी रहता है, जैसे जवाद साहब कह रहे थे, कोई ये 20 कनाल वाले so-called farm houses, they're called farmhouses, but we all know there's not an iota of farming that takes place there. They're just big palatial homes for people to enjoy the surroundings. तो वहां पे तो बिल्कुल ये आगे पीछे भी होते, वहां पे तो आपको फॉर्मली चीजें करनी भी नहीं पड़ती। You can just ensure that things get built in a particular way with some greasing of thumbs. So, I mean, for me, certainly to engage with professionals like yourselves is very meaningful, because it tells me that there are people who do think about these things. But I want to suggest to you that a lot of the professional sort of cadre of the community, which includes the bureaucracy, they hide behind technical questions. They hide behind technicalities and very selective use of issues like अच्छा ये needs, अब needs जो transportation की needs हैं, वो जो बेशतर तो इस्लामाबाद में रहने वाला बंदा तो बाइक चलाता है मिसाल के तौर पे, तो उसके needs की क्या बात है भाई? आपको 4 लेन का हाईवे बनाने की क्या जरूरत है? There's so many things which it feels like it's you could call it frustrating. I'm not frustrated. I know that we will continue, as I said, to kick and scream, because that's the only way these things get heard. The more we hide behind some kind of, in a sense, to find some way of, I don't think that there's a way of engaging with this other than making it clear that this is not happening because these are poor people. If this was a rich person, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. And what is particularly, I think, what we need to get into this conversation, and I'll stop here, is the fact that these people are the most productive members of our society that we're talking about. They're not leeching off rental incomes by hoarding plots in gated housing schemes. right? Or जो remittances buyer अमीर वाला बंदा remittances बैठकर फिर यहाँ पे corruption हाय करता है, वो वाली corruption आपको क्यों नहीं नजर आती जब वो अमीर करता है और आपको legal और corruption और ये सारे मामलात और roads के रास्ते में, a lot of, this is not the time and place, but there's also the signifier of development. So if development is happening, बेशक एक ऐसी road क्यों ना हो जिसकी शायद ही जरूरत है अगर लोगों की बात हो अक्सरियत, लेकिन डेवलपमेंट है तो डेवलपमेंट के रास्ते में कोई रुकावट नहीं होनी चाहिए. So there's so many layers to this story. And as Jawad Saab said, people like Tasneem Saab and Arif Hasan Saab have been talking about this for donkey's years. It's not like these are new debates. It's not like most of this has not been said before. And it really is about political will. And I think what I want to say is that if जो पढ़ा लिखा तबका है, जो शहर में जिसको ये सारा कुछ बेचा जाता है, डेवलपमेंट हो, so on and so forth, they need to sort of, I think, wake up and smell the music, really, in a way. Because these collective issues of where these towns and cities are going, and water and land and air, and these will be collective problems. So it's best that we don't make Islamabad the beautiful for the rich and ignore that the vast majority of residents are actually not from that category or class of people.
Great, thank you so much, Asim. And I think वही बहुत ज़रूरी point है कि किसके लिए ये development हो रही है और ये long term cost सबको bear करने पड़ेंगे और already उसकी वो हमें effects नज़र आ रहे हैं इस्लामाबाद जैसे शहर में भी. और अगर planning और इसका जो मकसद है, it should be to try to improve the lives of everyone in the city, not just a select few. And it's good to be able to discuss that a little bit more. But Jawad, I just very quickly wanted to come to you. My first time काफी कम रह गया है, लेकिन I just maybe if you could say a few words. You've been working in this sector for a while, and you have spoken of community-based housing solutions as well. What would you say is critical for any upgrading or resettlement plans to be successful? What do you think will work? What will not work in such a situation?
Yeah, okay, I'll be quick. I mentioned that those principles that we've laid out in terms of when we talk about the lowest income segment, what I'll talk about right now is the one category up. How do we get the private sector to come in and the role the government can play? For us, we need to understand where the incentives are for everybody from the low-level CDA inspector who's starting the problems all the way up to the developers. It's all about money. It's about greed. And how do you get that how do you speak that language to the developers to get them to come to this side? And that's something that I've been working on for the last as many years as I've been here. I ran into this problem that even when you try, we tried a policy in Punjab, and I'll end it with this note. In Punjab, we established affordable housing bylaws, and in that it was supposed to be that 20% of the homes will be built for the lower income segment, and there'll be price fixing for that. Now, after we went through the entire process of going from the Punjab Housing and Town Planning Authority to the Secretary Housing, to the Law Department, to the Cabinet, and back and forth, and finally, when it was approved, the clause that initially when we drafted it said 20% will be dedicated to homes and flats for the lower income segment. And when finally it was printed, it said plots and homes and flats. So somebody had stuck in plots in there, which basically undoes the entire effort by just putting the word plots in there. So we spent 2 years pushing on this policy, finally got it through, and just basically 5 letters changed the entire spirit, so now anybody goes through this process, they can just say, yes, we're just going to sell plots. And we know those plots that are for 3 marlas are selling for 70, 80 lakh rupees in different developments. So it's no longer for the low income segment. There's no price fixing there, and it defeats the purpose. So that's something that I've learned, that the policy of what you intend to do and how it ends up at the end are 2 very different things. So I'll end it there.
Yeah, thank you. Jawad, that example is I mean, it's quite obvious what's happening over there, and it's pretty bizarre in some ways how these things get inserted right at the end with long-term repercussions on housing itself. सिकंदर साहब, मैं बस आपसे आखिरी सवाल पे hopefully we can end there. आपका मुश्किल काम है आखिरी वो जवाब देना, but I mean सवाल तो मेरे पास बहुत थे, but just to wrap it up, I mean you've been interacting with the government quite actively, and so we've all discussed how there is a lack of interest politically to do anything, particularly around low cost housing in a way that is sensible and not like you said कि high rise बना दें या कहीं दूर लोगों को घर बना के दे दें. तो आपके ख्याल में ये indifference क्यों है? और इस्लामाबाद में एक बहुत फ़र्क अप्रोच ली गई है, स्पेशली कच्ची आबादियों की तरफ, जो कि सिंध और पंजाब में फिर भी थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा उसमें प्रोग्रेस रहा है. It's been different. And then just relatedly, in a case like H9 Abadi, जो Rimsha colony है, what is the role that you think urban planners, designers, relevant stakeholders can play in proposing more inclusive housing solutions and actually working with communities to think of these solutions as well?
I think what they need to do is this: के जो planners हैं, you need to look for some pressure groups, जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा self interest ना हो. And you need to see, look, अगर housing है, ये housing isolation में नहीं हो सकता है. You have to understand that you just can't have housing. ये developer भी जो है, government का भी ये था जी, high rise housing. You need public place. अगर आप थोड़ा सा 1974 में, I was there in Paris, Sergio Ponteos, the new towns they were doing around Paris, they all had job opportunities, they had universities, they had everything. तो वो पेरिस wasn't this कि पेरिस में सब कुछ हो रहा है. तो आपको थोड़ा सा ये हमारे जो लोग हैं ना जी, ये बट जाते हैं, ये बॉक्सेस में बट जाते हैं. The planning is not in small boxes. They talk about कच्ची आबादी, you talk about affordable housing, you need to look at it the holistic thing. मैं सिर्फ आपको एक बता दूं, जो रोड्स की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ जी, I didn't talk about it. रोड जो है जी, ये it's a non-starter. अभी जो बाहर countries वगैरह में है, they are trying to finish roads. LA में roads खत्म हो. You know why? Because you have to. It's not economical making a road, not building it. After 30 years, you have to resurface it. You have to change it. So if you do it, so how are you going to raise taxes? Are you going to raise taxes from a new development? Are you going to raise taxes from the existing development की पूरा road surface system है, उसको आप 30 years बाद आप उसको resurface करना है. So you need to minimize your roads. You need to have public transportation. And I'll talk about Islamabad context. चाहे वो metro हो, then you need to have local bus routes within the sectors. और अभी sectors का जो problem है, जो कोई आपको नहीं बताता है, the sectors are not conducive to public transportation. जो bus routes बनने हैं, वो sectors में नहीं बन सकते हैं. You have to modify the sectors. Now, if somebody is looking at the whole city and they want more urban mobility, whether it's a lower middle class person, whether it's a poor person, whether it's a rich person, वो गाड़ी पर नहीं करता है. So you need to not say transport or anything. You have to talk about mobility. Mobility is not class conscious कि जी ये class conscious है, ये class conscious नहीं है. आप mobility का करें, आप public transport को करें, mobility करें. अगर आपने redesign करने sectors, आपको redesign करें, और आपको इस्लामाबाद को city इसको demagnetize करें. So this is what I'm trying to say, but you need vision for this. दूसरा ये है कि I would like to point out to CDA का जो I had made a proposal for certain कच्ची आबादी, very high density proposal, और उसी लोगों को resettle करना था. CDA से मैं बात कर रहा था, वो ये कह रहे थे कि हमारा policy भी ये है to resettle these people there, and they got a certain sector. But what I'm trying to say, there are about 54 or 55 unrecognized Kachi Abadis, probably. I mean, maybe Asim Sajjad Akhtar can correct me, but I think there are more than 44. उन्होंने कोई 11-12 recognize किए हैं, लेकिन इनके पास तो पैसे ही नहीं है कि ये इन लोगों को अगर 100 क्वार्टर आप ले लें, उसके लिए मैंने एक प्रपोजल बनाया है. अगर 100 क्वार्टर आप ले लें, 100 क्वार्टर में से पता नहीं, अभी मैं ख्याल पुलिस हैव गॉट द प्रॉपर रिकॉर्ड्स. बाकी लोगों के पास सीडीए कच्ची आबादी जो everybody is talking about the कच्ची आबादी सेल, they don't even have figures इधर कितने 100 क्वार्टर में कितने लोग हैं. अब जाएं वहाँ कच्ची आबादी सीडीए सेल में जाएं, अब पता कर लीजिए कि 100 क्वार्टर में कितने लोग हैं, वो आपको नहीं बता सकें. आपको रिकॉर्ड चाहिए तो आपको पुलिस जाना पड़ेगा. पुलिस है ऑल द रिकॉर्ड्स. तो ये मैं कह रहा हूँ कि वो इनके जो पॉलिसी है कि जी हम रीसेटल करेंगे, एरियाज डिजाइन करेंगे, दे डोंट हैव द मनी, दे जस्ट कांट डू इट. सो मेरा भी यही ख्याल है कि ये जो अपग्रेडेशन इज अ गुड ऑप्शन. अपग्रेडेशन करें, हाई डेंसिटी करें, लो राइज करें. और ये हाई राइज जो है ना, you know, if you all have got pressure groups, you should really come out and against the pressure groups, क्योंकि जो वेस्ट में जो मिस्टेक्स की है वही हम करेंगे. But you know, you could they were trying to there is a certain cell. ये फेडरल गवर्नमेंट हाउसिंग का जो है वो ये सारा F6 में और जो भी कर रहे थे, अगेन मेकिंग 22 you know story apartment blocks. Now hopefully I hope it's not going to happen now. That would have been a complete disaster for the city, for law and order. पता नहीं क्या क्या होता वहाँ. तो मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि आप जरा पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट को जरा मोबिलिटी पर आप आ जाए. Now people should address mobility. तो मोबिलिटी पर आ जाए, उसमें मॉडल स्लेट भी आ जाएगा और उसी को जो आबादियाँ जो बनी हुई हैं उसको यू गो फॉर अपलिफ्ट ऑफ द आबादीज. और दूसरा करें कि ये जो इतने लोग आ रहे हैं, I mean, you have to look at cause. Why are they coming? Why are they coming to Islamabad? Are they getting jobs here? Are they getting housing here? I mean, why do they come? Or why does certain number of people come? For that, you need to have a regional plan. आपको regional approach होना चाहिए. You need a regional structure plan. Unless you have a regional structure plan, you can't deal with the problems of Islamabad. And मेरा सिर्फ गुजारिश ये है कि आप हाउसिंग को आइसोलेशन में काइंडली प्लीज ना देखें. It's a you need to it's a wider it's a planning is a wider problem. It's the myopic thing कि जी social housing है, इसको करना है, फलाना है, जो upper class housing करना है, 22-story apartment करना है. It's not. It's a holistic problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sikandar Saab, and absolutely I agree with you. I think हमें housing, transport, land use ये सब चीज़ें इकट्ठी देखने की ज़रूरत है. I think बात ये कि हाउसिंग पे रिसेंटली वही बात है कि ये नया पाकिस्तान हाउसिंग प्रोग्राम में कुछ डिबेट शुरू हुई है, बट अगेन इट्स वेरी मच फोकस्ड ऑन building new units. So we wanted to maintain a focus on housing, but talk about different aspects of it as well. और ये जो बात आपने की resources की भी, I mean, I always wonder कि resources ये बड़ी सड़कों के लिए तो आ जाती हैं, लेकिन इन इस तरह के projects के लिए available नहीं होती. Why is that as well? But I think we've just heard very interesting insights from all of you here today. And it's almost like the first conversation. इसमें इतनी ज़्यादा और पहलू हैं discuss करने के लिए. So I hope कि हम ये conversation continue रख सकें. लेकिन आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया टाइम निकालने के लिए आज. And I really hope that we'll continue this conversation. So thank you so much.